So welcome to the second program created for Voice for this semester. I'm very, very excited to welcome Dr. Ken Gorcycca to this program. Many of you may know Ken. He has been very, very active in veterinary medicine for many years as one of the original founders of what is now known as PrideVMC. Currently, Ken is a veterinary death doula, animal end of life practitioner, a doula at A Gentle Rest in San Francisco. And so he's going to be talking a bit about that experience and kind of what goes into it and what he's doing and this particular kind of chapter in his career. Ken is also a really amazing artist, enjoys painting, and just really just a fascinating human. And I'm really just delighted that he agreed to participate in this programming this fall. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Ken. So I will be spotlighting him on your Zoom. And from there, take it away, Ken.
Well, Lisa and the rest, thank you for this invitation. I really have really been a big supporter of Voice from the very beginning, back in, I don't know, it was 2000 or, from Cornell. And working with the LGVMA and then Broad Spectrum and then Pride, there was such an overlap that I really got to know a lot of our members, and I really appreciate the leadership that students really bring to the profession. So I hope I can maybe bring a little bit of understanding to the euthanasia experience, and I'll share sort of how I got into this end of life. It's my encore calling, I should say. I've been giving lectures at the AVMA and local VMAs. And so I'm just going to use a few slides just to get us updated of where we are. This is just, I wanted to show, I work at A Gentle Rest in San Francisco. And the top line is veterinarians. All we do is in-home euthanasia. And we have two great admins that answer the phone 7 days a week. And I've started my own practice as well up in Sonoma County. It's called A Beloved Farewell. And you can follow my website. I'm going to be bringing in a lot of different resources because I also teach at the University of Vermont's Companion Animal End of Life Doula training program. It's a program that I recommend you all look into. It's a 6-week online course teaching us about the doula perspective. And my whole point as I come into this work is that at death, medicine and spirit unite. And this is not religious in a sense. It's just really the basics of humanity. And we as veterinarians have this opportunity to support clients at this most emotional moment when we have these animal companions that are their best friends, their medicine, it's just, I mean, they can't even describe what these animals mean. And I have the privilege to be with them for this hour and learn the life stories of the pets and try to create a ceremonial rite of passage. And I'm trying to bring that into the profession. I understand that most practitioners are so busy, they don't have the ability to put extra time into it. So this is where you can refer to a lot of us in-home euthanasia vets around the country, or you can create a space in your clinic for a end-of-life navigator, which could be the veterinary technician or the vet staff, and someone that really wants to make this moment important. I'll just quickly go into how my journey came to this point. I started practice in San Francisco at the dawn of the AIDS pandemic, and that was I didn't realize that a human illness was going to be my North Star, so to speak. I was at the epicenter of the AIDS pandemic, and so many of over the 10 years that I was working there, I lost over 300 clients and dozens of colleagues and friends. And so when I look back now, I didn't realize what we were doing. Everyone in the community that was helping, we were death doulas. We were helping people die, and that included in the veterinary practice because and what I found was that At that time, since we didn't know what was causing AIDS, and at the same time, many of the illnesses that people with AIDS were developing were potentially zoonotic diseases, and so physicians were, without knowing what to do, were telling their patients to give up their pets at a time when they were dying, being ostracized by their families, losing their jobs, losing their apartments. And as a veterinarian, I knew that was not didn't make sense because even if they were somewhat of a risk, the benefits of having their companions was really important. So I became very involved with that movement. I was an educator and I helped create Pets Are Wonderful Support. And I'm really proud that the work we did on zoonosis turns out that the risk was minimal, even hard to even document. And so there really was no reason. And now animals are considered medicine for all types of people. And my work was put on the CDC website. I hope it's still there. I didn't really look because a lot of it's been deleted if it had LGBTQ in it. I developed AIDS myself. I was infected in vet school, and so that was another important lens that I looked through because I had my own personal death that I was expecting. And I did get sick finally and had to retire from practice at an early age. And so I my work in the LGVMA and eventually in Pride really gave me a place to keep using my energy. And so I was really proud of helping the community and the veterinary profession evolve in that way. I think as I was an activist from the AIDS days, and so I didn't have any fears at that point, where a lot of people are in corporate worlds or in veterinary businesses, and they really can't be activists because they'll put their jobs at risk. And so it took a lot of us, and also people that were in the government jobs where they were protected in those days, they could be leaders. And I did a lot of studying of shamanic work. Michael Harner's classes in Marin County, where that's about spirit, and that helped me understand death and dying. My own father's death, he died at home in hospice, where he was surrounded by his family, and that was a very powerful moment, realizing the importance of being home and just being surrounded by love. And I like to bring that into what we do in veterinary medicine, where we are now moving back to home. It's a privilege for sure, but we can allow for people and their pets and their families to be together in this sacred moment. And so what I did, I'm an artist, and so I spent a lot of this time painting. That was part of my healing. And then I went into nature and did a lot of vision fast, trying to figure out what to do with my life, because here I am. I survived, and that's I can tell you that being a veterinarian allowed me to make choices that other people couldn't. I didn't do the medicines at first because they were toxic. I knew that. I just did stress reduction and alternative medicines. And here I am. I was in Death Valley on a vision fast, and I said, "What am I going to do?" And I realized that death was on my shoulder, and so I got back and started Googling end of life in veterinary practice, and I found the University of Vermont doula class. I found the companion animal and euthanasia training academy, and I realized that there was a whole movement within the profession about end of life. And so I stepped right into it. I went out with my friend Ari Rozicki, who had started a Gentle Rest, and on that first appointment, I knew that this was going to be my calling. Um, just a brief history of euthanasia. It was just an act of ending life at first, and then we started to do more compassion with sedate. Now, of course, you sedate every animal. When I was in school, we just gave the pentobarbital right into the vein, and the animal died. Uh, I mean, it was somewhat peaceful, but there was stress involved, and so we've come around a long ways. So, what is a doula? In ancient Greece, it was a woman servant or caregiver that helped with childbirth. Today, it's considered a midwife. In modern hospice movement, in the 1980s, there became death doulas, and that a lot of it came out of the AIDS pandemic, where we were all helping our friends and family and neighbors die of AIDS, because there was no support. So in all the urban areas and rural areas, we set up these support systems. And then in the last pandemic, the University of Vermont had already started a death doula program for humans. And Francesca Arnold realized that there could be a place for animal doulas as well, and that's where that came out of. What is a companion animal doula? It's really, if you step back from the veterinary practitioner, it's really supposed to be someone who provides non-medical, holistic support for the comfort of the to the dying animal and their caregivers, and that includes education, guidance, and emotional, spiritual, practical care. But the truth is that veterinarians at the in that moment of death with their animal companions and their clients, those roles merge, and so I believe that veterinarians have always played the death doula role, and we just didn't know it. And what does it mean to be a death doula? Accept that birth, death, and grief are normal. Assist clients with having a personally meaningful experience. Companion rather than treat. We're no longer treating the animals. We're helping companion the clients so that we can help them have a good experience. And so we're serving them rather than fixing. And the companion animal doula, in the class I teach, I'm encouraging veterinarians and veterinary technicians to be part of it, and a lot of them are because they are on the front lines doing this work. But also, it's dog walkers, it's groomers, it's grief counselors, crematorium staff. I mean, there's a whole wide range of people that can benefit and play a role as a end of life navigator. And again, I keep coming back to this, but it's really my belief that at the end of life, veterinary practitioners and the death doula roles merge, and that's um, and so I just want to go quickly through some of the tenets. What we teach at this class is that we come in with a beginner's mind because we really don't know where the client's coming from, what their experiences with death are, what their emotions are. And so if we can come in without judgment, because a lot of times we as veterinarians, we want to fix and we say we're the leader, we know what should be done, but we really don't at the end of life, except for being present um, and coming in with unconditional positive regard. That's just accepting and valuing individuals without judgment. They might be having an emotional breakdown. They might be angry. They might have religious beliefs that are different than our own, or they might want a natural death. We can talk about that versus they don't believe in euthanasia. So we have to come in with that to try to help them. And finally, weight is one of the things we talk about is why am I talking? Sometimes you don't, I mean, in this moment, I know sometimes just presence is all we need. You don't have to be explaining the diagnosis of this, why this animal is dying. It's not necessary at that point unless the client really is in need of that. But if we have an end of life navigator role in the practice, then that person can just be there just to be present, and a lot of times now we're finding uh, hospitals are creating special rooms for euthanasia that are not the steel tables that have blankets and couches and again, of course, there's all these in-home euthanasia businesses now. Um, this is just a book that my partner Ari and I wrote. If you reach out to me, I can get you a copy. It just talks about how to talk about euthanasia. And then I just want to talk a little bit about my own practice. And this has been an evolution. I started out not thinking that I could even hit a vein. I had most of us veterinarians do not do well with venipuncture just because the veterinary staff do it, and so I was like really nervous. And I've realized after I got through that fear that all of us can be good at that, and part of the doula practice is really communication, and listening. In my practice at a gentle rest, the navigators talk to the clients and they get the stories and help set up the appointments, answer their questions. But when the vets come in on the day of, then I call each client because I want to start that communication with them so they hear my voice. I can answer it because a lot of times that day is really they're an emotional roller coaster. They're just sitting in vigil going, "Oh my God, my animal's going to die today." Am I killing my animal? That's a big question that they have, you know. And so I help calm them. And then when I get there, I text them I'm coming, and we do the paperwork. Then I sit down and I do a deathbed storytelling, you know, where I sit down and say, now I want to really meet your pet, and I want to hear the whole story, and I want to hear how you met, how they got their names, what nicknames they have they ever run away? Do you dress them for Halloween? And during this process, I many times get people to laugh, you know, and it's the worst day possible, but there's a way that you can really be gentle and kind, you know, and so I even offer to do photographs, and some people want that, some people don't. But I always ask if I could take a picture of their pet, unless they're in the dying process. There's still some beauty there, and then we do the sedation. That's a 10-minute, 5 to 10 minutes, and then we do the euthanasia. Then after that, I always ask them if it's okay if I can do a ceremonial ritual to acknowledge their pets and their lives. And so what I do is it's not religious, but I do use Tibetan bells. I ring the bell to start the moment, and then I repeat the life story of their pet. I've taken notes, and then I ask if it's okay if I use some sandalwood or sage, and I just acknowledge that sacred moment with that scent. And then I read a poem that I have for them, and close the ceremony. I give them a quartz heart. Quartz is this represents unconditional love, and so I put it on the body. And if there's many people, I give them each one. I say, this is so you can remember your pet's essence. And some people I hear hold on to that stone for days, just in that moment. And then they have some private time alone, because there's in reality that's in the old days we would be with our parents and grandparents, you know, or even our animals overnight in vigil. And then once we're ready, I wrap the animal with I call it the shrouding, with a blanket. We put them on a stretcher, or if it's a small animal, we put them into a basket and take them back to the car to say a final goodbye. Um, and I'll just quickly go into my technique. I'm really big into AI. I find it really helps me. So I put these stories into ChatGPT. I ask create an obituary poem, and then within 10 seconds, it has a poem. You have to go through it and make sure that it's what you know, if you want to add things to it. And then now what I'm doing is I take the poem and I can put it into this app called Prisma, which creates songs. And so I actually make a heart song for them, and I can say I want to make a tango, I want to make a Beach Boys song. It depends, you know. Last time there was a woman that was from China, so I made it into a Chinese love song, and I send that to them, and that's really a powerful way of bringing joy to them in that day. And then I print out the photo and poem and send it to them in an obituary card. These are just some of the questions that I talk about. How did you meet? How did you decide on a name? Any nicknames? Have you traveled? Are they a foodie? Did you dress them up? Have they ever gotten lost? And what life lessons have they taught you? And so it's we go deep, and but I find that most people are open to it, and it gives them a sense of comfort just to be present with their animal. Now, if the animal is in the dying process, then of course I move forward and do the euthanasia sooner and do this later. Um, Again, the deathbed photographs, I then put them into a Prisma app. It's a photo app that you can make them into pieces of art, and people love that as well. And I won't really share this at the moment, but this was a little song I made about Acorn, the Pomeranian. Um, so just to finish off the role of the veterinarian, I mean, we have medical expertise, but we also offer comfort and dignity and respect, and we can all learn to be really more present in this time. Um, let's see here. Location matters. You can be at home. That's where most people would prefer to be, but it's not it's a privilege, and it's an expense. 15% of clients will not return to the clinic where the euthanasia was performed, so you're going to be losing clients. Um, and Aftercare practices are really important. I just want to mention, you know, how you handle the body with respect. A lot of clinics just throw them in the trash bags, and I just think that's insane, really, because you're not treating your own staff well, because we're not respecting these bodies. you can put them into, there's the crematoriums offer body bags, and there's just ways of respect that, and I think in our world of compassion and fatigue, it's important for us as veterinarians to take that farther. Um, just the gentle language that we use can all be taught. Um, Helping new grads. There's a lot of courses out there. The CADA offers students free membership. The International American Association of Hospice Palliative Care also offers free membership, and they have an annual meeting. And I recommend clinics offer death rounds. Lessons that we learn. People always say being present is the number one thing. I find teaching unconditional love, teaching resilience and patience, inspiring compassion. And that the last thing they teach us is that you can have a good ending with the rite of passage. So, and I'm not going to go into this, but I think one of the things in our profession we can start talking about is advanced directives, getting people to think about the ending before it comes, because a lot of times it's in the moment, and do they really want to go farther with expense? It could be $10,000-$20,000 for 2 months. I mean, is even in people we go too far, And so I'm really a big promoter of advanced directives. Natural death, some people want that, and we can do palliative death where we offer pain medications. It takes more time, and you might need a hospice veterinarian to do that. Some people don't believe in euthanasia, and I've I'm not sure where I fit on that line. I would help. I have helped one client who believed in that, um, and the animal did die in her arms. It did die. It was a kidney failure animal, and so I checked it, and it wasn't suffering. It wasn't really in the suffering stage, but um, and the overnight vigil, just being with the body afterwards. I've done that with my own pets, where I have candles and flowers, and in most practices we don't allow that, offer that. But if a client wants it, I surely will encourage them, because it's a really powerful way to go through the grieving process. And children is another thing. I encourage all children to be present. It depends on the parents, of course, but they are wiser than us usually when we have death. I find they ask questions, and they understand. I give all parents this book from Rogers, When a Pet Dies. Behavioral euthanasia is another really difficult cases where people are living in pure, they love these animals. The animal is so terrifying, they can't let anyone into their house. And eventually it bites someone, and they have to let them go. And I have no problem helping them release the spirits of these animals, because they can't be adopted out, and it really is a struggle for them. Aftercare we talked about, and what does a client want? The patient sleeping, not separated. Don't take them in the back to put in catheters. That scares them to death. No pain, minimal restraint, safe environment. Everyone's ready. A quiet death, a quick death. This could be in a clinic, at home. When I do euthanasias, people are online, zooming in if they can't be there. They want to participate. It could be at a beach, a park. I've done that. And in-home allows for a lot more people to be involved. And again, the business costs 50% won't return. So it makes sense to refer out if you can. And just mention another thing I'm involved with is open-minded scientists. We're looking at the time of death experiences, and you'll be hearing more about this. But what we're finding is that veterinarians and clients experience things at the moment of death of our animals that we can't really explain. That can be gases, lights, electronic fluctuations. Other animals responding, children responding. So it's really interesting, and we have a website you can check out. Um, and these are just some resources. But that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So now we can get into the real discussion. I can't hear you, Lisa.
Thank you so much for that overview. I'm gonna stop your sharing on my side here and put you back on Spotlight. Really, really, really interesting topic. And I know that we've been friends and colleagues for years, and I remember when you kind of started on this path, and for me as a non-veterinarian, that kind of just hangs around for a while, it made sense. But I also imagine that there were some colleagues that were like, huh, that's interesting. How has the reception been with your colleagues, or how has it evolved, maybe?
Well, as I said, I found that there's a group of us out there that do end of life work. In fact, there's of course there's Lap of Love. That's all they do, and but there's a lot of private individual practitioners. And so when we meet at the IHPC conference, which was just last month, I'm just amazed that we're all in the same boat. You know, we really want to be in this world of end of life and death. As for my other colleagues, it's been, I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but I do understand that any change or any new ideas that come into the profession are always pushed back on. That's just a natural response to professions or to people in general. It took me 3 years to speak at the AVMA. I kept pushing and pushing. They finally gave me 10 minutes and during the exhibit hall, and it was really well attended, and then all of a sudden you got all these articles because people really want to hear about it.
Yeah.
So last year, or this year, I should say, I gave a talk. They put me on the last day, which is fine, and we had a full room, and so
Wow.
people want to hear about it, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been speaking at the local VMA, as in the local county VMAs, and I've done now three, and they tend to be the most attended uh, dinner meetings that they've had in recent times. So there is an interest of trying to understand euthanasia better, because it's their clients, you know, and we all want to do a good job.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that there is interest, and so that gives me a lot of hope that we'll keep on moving forward and even make the whole profession better, you know,
Sure.
you know, and so yeah, that's how I see it. I see positive, uh, just that resistance, but there was resistance to AIDS. It took 10 years to talk about it. There was
Yeah.
resistance to the LGBT community. It
Yeah.
took it took a half a century to talk about it,
All
you
right.
know. And now we're going backwards, which
Right.
scares me, but it doesn't mean that we can't keep moving forward. We're in a different world
Sure.
and we have a better connection with all of us. So
Sure. Sure.
that's good news. And Lisa, you've always taught me a lot about being present and leaning into this work, you know, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a gay man, and you know, I've had, you know, a disability, but I'm also privileged, you know, I'm a white man, and I've learned about that through this work, and you've taught
Mm.
me about this work as well, and I really appreciate that because
Mhm.
a lot of us have blind spots. Even if we've done this work, we still have blind spots, you know, so we're always learning, you know, and the same thing with death. There's a lot of blind spots there.
Mm.
But I'm hopeful because I think the whole society is moving to understand death better. You know, we went from the time when there was books and how to, you know, in the days when how do you have a good death, you know, in the Middle Ages, and then all of a sudden we had science and medicine, and all of a sudden we started dying in hospital rooms, you know.
Yeah.
And now there's a whole hospice movement. We're dying at home again. And
Yeah.
the same with animals. We're dying at home again. And so, but it's going to be a process for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
So
I,
at what point do families reach out, or is there a referral to your
um,
service, or how does
I
that work?
would say it's usually not like a couple days before or the day of. Sometimes people just
Mm.
don't know. Sometimes they do know, and they or they want, you know, they they set up an appointment, and in our practice they can cancel 2 hours notice. It's not a problem because we know that the animals have ups and downs, and it's a really hard decision. But but usually I'd say they'll know within you know, 2 or 3 days they're starting to think about it. And but it's not, you know, it's not until then because everyone
Yeah.
has hope, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
all want more time with our
Yeah.
beloved. And the thing is, sometimes you can plan it, and a good ending, and sometimes the animals tell us. Sometimes they don't, and you have to go to the emergency room, and you're not going to leave them. You know, that's just where they're going to have a death, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and so I try to explain that to people to have a plan B always. You know, even if you schedule in-home euthanasia, sometimes the animal dies in the middle of the night. You know, and it's, you know, and so I try to help them understand how to support them.
Yeah.
You know, it's there's many different paths.
Great. So we have a question in the chat, so I'm going to read it out for folks that may be viewing later. So Jamie writes, I often struggle with whether or not to follow up with clients who seem to be having a particularly hard time with the euthanasia. I'd like to check in on them, but I also worry that a call from the clinic would be triggering. Any thoughts on how to approach this beyond sending a sympathy card?
Well, I think, I mean, this is what I understand from the conferences I go to. I've really tried to go deep into the end of life world. But if you think someone's struggling, I think that it warrants a phone call, and not that you're going to be able to help them, but sometimes they have questions.
Mm,
The animal made a sound. Was he, or was it too, was he struggling, but you can guide them to resources. Not that you're going to be the resource, but you can guide them. So I don't I think they would be appreciative personally, but in humanity, there's everybody, and you're not going to please everybody. So it's really a personal judgment. But my understanding is that it's good to even check in the next day. But
mm,
we don't do that in our practice, just the way it works. But my new practice that I'll be a solo practitioner. I probably will do that.
mm,
And
mm.
people like to, I send them my obituary poems and songs by text
Uh-huh.
that same day, and so
Yeah.
and sometimes we communicate, and and they want to talk, and they're grateful. And so yeah, that's my thoughts, but each clinic's different. And um, yeah, it,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I I love that idea though. If you see someone struggling, just go ahead and reach out. I can you might recall my previous pup Buddha. And I will say that when I had to let him go, and it was at home euthanasia, and was raised a Southern Baptist girl. We had a nice wake. I invited friends over. We all celebrated and feted him the night before. And and then I had my best friend came that day of and shortly before, and we waited for our family vet and the technician to come, and they joined us in a prayer for his little spirit. And and it was even to this day the singular most pivotal moment that I've had within the profession.
Yep.
It was a beautiful experience. It was handled with such care. It was handled so respectfully. The fact that they actually joined in to participate in kind of our farewell prayer right before the action, for me, whether or not they believed in any of that, was the fact that they actually joined in and didn't just stand off to the side, but they were very much a part of that spiritual moment for us, was really, really just amazing. And the card was lovely, a lovely thing afterwards. And all of the things were really lovely. And so so this is definitely something that I definitely wanted to make time at some point to kind of sit down and chat with you
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
because
No.
it is so it really gave me a different perspective having worked in the profession for so long.
I understand what you're saying. And I think that most people, I would say, working in the end of life world are open to that, that we
Mm,
want to we want to make this a good experience, and everyone has their own um, way, and
yeah,
some doctors it's going to be focusing on the animal and making sure that it's the right moment to help them
yeah,
with answering their quality of life questions.
yeah,
Others, it's talking just about humanity and supporting the person. In my case, it's about spirit and about ritual and storytelling, which is part of that.
sure.
But I think there's a the profession's waking up, and I think people are so amazed when I come to their house, and they had no idea what to expect because there's,
Mm.
they had bad experiences in the past, or they've never had a euthanasia before, and it gives them a lot of comfort, and
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, it's
So, how did you come to develop your own kind of rituals for this? And have you had clients ask you to add certain types of things from their own kind of spiritual or journey, or just, you know,
sure.
death in most cultures can be it's very rooted in spirit in some way. It's very ritualistic. The way in which that we handle death and after death, usually for like a week or so, it is very significant. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you developed your own practice and
Sure,
incorporate it with
sure.
the other
Part
aspects?
of it's from my own personal experiences of being present with people dying in the AIDS
Mhm.
pandemic, and getting to see how families reacted, how how the moment of death is, and in my own father's death and my own animal companions' deaths. I've been through many. I think that some of my ceremony and ritual came out of my shamanic work classes, just understanding and that's also about just spirituality in general is about
Mhm.
cycles, and it's just like the earth cycles, and earth and living and dying is part of that great cycle. So I think it's just a natural place to bring in ritual. I can talk a little bit about other people. Some people I've come in where they've have beautiful altars that they've created, that I was
Yeah.
one this week, and they had all the pictures and that.
Mhm.
Um, Other people have had parties like yourself, a going away party,
Yeah.
and they have all their friends come, all the dog or cat's friends come and say their goodbyes in a way, and that's always beautiful. Some people just want to be alone. They say, my friends
Mhm.
all want to be here, but I want to be present with my own animal.
Yeah.
And then there's all the cultural differences. Although I must say, I work in San Francisco, and so we're pretty enlightened with diversity and cultural differences. And so when I go in, of course, I listen. And some people will. I always say, is it okay if I do a ceremony? And I'd say maybe 1 or 2% will say, well, I'm not religious. I'm not sure. I say, well, this isn't religious. It's just a rite of passage. And then
Yeah.
they're okay with it,
Oh,
and when I do it, they go, oh, they didn't know that that's what they needed.
wow.
But also there are cultural differences. Some I've known some people, I think I don't know if it's Buddhist or some of the Eastern religions, they don't,
Hmm.
you're not supposed to touch the body after they've
Mm.
died. And
Yeah.
so they'll ask me, please don't touch the body. I say, well, I have to also, I have to listen to the heart. So
Yeah.
but we then will wrap them in a blanket so they're not touched, and I respect them that way. Um, I just was at a dinner with about 15 Japanese college students. They were, some of them were pre-vet, I guess. It was with Lynette Hart and Ben Hart, and who were my professors from Davis, and I didn't realize I was sort of a guest of honor, about a euthanasia vet. And so we were at dinner, and they had all these questions about, because in Japan, they prefer natural death. They don't
Mm.
like, they're really, it's a taboo to do euthanasia. So they have a lot of hospice,
Yeah.
but the younger generation is now more accepting of euthanasia because
Oh.
of the international peoples that have come into Japan. And then the younger people have different media, social media, they understand death differently now.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so, but they were very curious about that. And so I found it really interesting. And I know in Latin cultures, when I come into, I find that that's the whole family is there, the grandmother, the grandfather,
Yeah.
the baby, and they're all there. I mean, this is a very, and they all want to be part of this,
Mhm.
and, and so I'm always, I'm very supportive of trying to support them in that way. I just had a, uh, a client and her partner were from China, and they were really into the respect of the body, and we went through the whole ceremony, and that was beautiful. And then they wanted to come and see the animal afterwards in our clinic, but we don't have the ability to show them the dead body. And so they finally figured out that at the crematorium they would defrost the
Oh,
animal because it's frozen.
yeah.
You don't want to see it when it's frozen, and
No.
and they'll clean it up and allow them to have that last vigil. Some
Yeah.
people want to watch the animal have a private cremation. Some they'll watch that, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are fearful of the cremation process because of what they've learned on social media, in the movies, how these, which is true.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
human places would just mix everybody together and give them a bit of sand, and that was what they were doing for decades, and so I always recommend all veterinarians go down to visit the crematoriums, really get a feel for them so that you can share that with the client because they're going to have anxiety around it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think if there's other, and of course, then there's the gay culture, and I feel privileged to be working in the Castro, and so I have a personal fondness to help gay culture.
Sure.
That's me. And yesterday I had a client um, uh, euthanize his soul dog. It was a
Mm,
pit bull Pomeranian mix of some sort. And through the process, I realized that he had been a long-term survivor of AIDS, and
mm,
he didn't have any friends left. This was his, and he was really, really upset. So I
mm,
was able to connect with him on that level, and he didn't want to be there at the moment of death, so he left, and I took care of it. But everyone deals with it differently. But but I have so much more to learn, and I learned a lot from the clients as well,
yeah.
and the real thing is I learned from the animals, I mean, to learn this. I wish everyone could spend a month just being with these animals on their deathbed, because it would change your perspective of life and living and dying,
Mm,
and it's
mm,
such a privilege.
mm.
I look forward to going to work, which I never expected to be doing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned how even, cultural practices continue to change and evolve generationally, particularly as we have exposure to one another, right? And each other's culture. And it is remarkable, I think, to see us moving away from this kind of what they call disenfranchised grief, right? Where it's like, well, I mean, it's just a dog, or it's just a cat, or it's just a lizard, those types of things. But no, this is, we spend so much time talking about the fact that this is a core family member, right? And then to also show and practice that right till the end, I think is um a good evolutionary practice, I think. So yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think that the profession has grown up and
Yeah.
evolved. Because as they say, when I was in school, we had no talk about euthanasia really. And even today, when we look at the studies of this colleges, it's still minimally touched upon. And it's like CADA is trying to get a class. They have a class, online class, but in some of the colleges now are including that in the class. One of the things I've learned through working with the universities, that the curriculum is so full that it's almost impossible to get something added. It's like you almost have to
Yeah.
shoot somebody to
Yeah. Like
get a class. And
shoehorning in. Yeah.
I've been, I'm from Davis, and so I work with Dean Stetter and his group, and I keep saying, Dean, I want Davis to be the best deaf veterinary school in the world, and they all, it's like, yes, yes, but nobody wants to go there,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I said, yeah, if you say no, that means it's going to be a yes. So we're gonna do it. But because when I hear that, I know that means that it's a net need, so
So, I recognize that this is, it seems to be a calling, which, so many people in vet med come to the profession as a calling, but this particular work seems to be very uniquely situated as a calling. So, you mentioned just a few moments ago that you look forward to going to work, and yet this still must be somewhat emotionally challenging to some degree. How do you practice,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
I,
self-care around this?
yeah. My husband asks me all the time,
Yeah.
okay, but
You good?
I would say that um, I'm pretty in my work at least, I'm pretty insulated in the sense that I have staff that deal with the front end part of the conversation, and that's where a lot
Yeah.
of emotions is. And they're actually protecting the veterinarians in a way because I
Yeah.
didn't come in and I mean I do talk to them and I have this relationship on the day of, but I have an hour with them, and by the
Mm.
end of the day I have, and the most we do a day is four.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, I don't even remember who I saw, because I can't remember, it's just we're in that sacred space and then I'm gone, and I don't
Mhm.
take that home with me,
Mhm.
in that sense. But it can be, I guess the hardest part in a mobile practice is that sometimes you have to drive for long distances and that can be that in itself is taxing. But I've learned to listen to podcasts and now I listen to my songs. I say I'm going to create a YouTube channel and just listen to my heart
Nice.
songs
Yeah.
and because I just think they're so fun, and
Yeah.
the tangos and it's I just never knew I'd be a musician in this world and
Right.
but I we all can now, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice, nice. And so, you also talked a bit about kind of making sure that um everyone in the family, has the opportunity to participate, including children. And, I think that lots of parents struggle with at what age is this the right age, and oh my goodness, the goldfish versus the gerbil, and now it's a dog and a cat, and how could you talk a little bit about how you help families navigate that?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's always their choice. The
Yeah,
parents
sure.
know best, but I always try to let them know that it's okay. And the fact that it's a life event that for the
Mhm.
children, sometimes our animals was our first experience with death.
Yeah.
Um, and of course mine was a goldfish, and then it
Yeah.
was a guinea pig, and then it was, a rabbit. I never really had any support with that. I did my own ceremony. I buried them. And I was shocked when they flushed the goldfish down the toilet. I never did that again. But
Yeah.
that's just what they did, and so I let them decide. And I find that when they do participate, that it's pretty powerful. But I
Mhm.
understand, and a lot of times it's the parents to make the choice, and it might not be
Yeah,
the right one for the kids, honestly.
sure.
But and I always give them the Fred Rogers book on dying, for
Sure, sure.
the under 10 group. And then they always a lot of parents ask the kids if they want to, and some of them just don't, especially
Yeah,
teenagers,
sure.
and that's absolutely fine. But I know that I encourage it, honestly, and I encourage that all the animals be present as well. They
Mhm.
sense death through scent and through energy and through our emotions, and then they're not fearful. They accept it, but they will go through grieving. I mean,
Yeah.
if they're buddies for 15 years, they're gonna, it's I think it's important to let them experience that because they're sad as well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had never considered an advanced directive for my pets. So can you talk a little bit about kind of how that came about? Because like this is literally the first time I've heard of that. And I'm like, wow, that is a great idea. Including things just, like at what point, so that because in the moment it's sometimes really difficult to make those decisions.
It can.
And there's also these things like, I do relish seeing videos of pet parents saying, okay, like this, we know what's going to happen tomorrow, so today is the bucket list, like you get a Big Mac and you get to go
Yeah,
to the
believe me,
beach and you
I
get to
do.
do this, and
I tell them milk chocolate is fine, ice cream cake, they do all that. And sometimes you overdo it. I always say moderation because then
right.
they get diarrhea, It's
Right, yeah,
but no, they people, they're getting a mistake and believe me, I see everything. And I do think the last meal is also important. I always say if they have an appetite or even if they don't, still offer them food. It's symbolic. It's
Mhm.
It's just
Caring.
it's tender, and uh, and so as for the advanced directive, that came out of the doula class I'm teaching, and that came out of course, the human world where most of us
Sure.
still don't have advanced directives, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
and but I think I'm not sure how to bring it into the profession, because veterinarians don't want to talk about death. But I think it could be a brochure, even on the very first visit, because death can come as a hit by a car about an emergency.
yeah.
Do you really want to put your animals on life support, which most people don't, but some do?
Right,
This doesn't make
right,
sense in veterinary medicine, really.
right.
And I see a lot of people that at the end that are they love their animals and they're treating them with respect and they do keep them alive.
Yeah,
They'll carry them around. They hand feed them. They're being
yeah,
hospice nurses and it's beautiful. But eventually, then the quality is down and you have to
yeah,
help them sometimes.
yeah,
But yeah, so I think that the advanced directive is just it's just a tool to help. Surely for cancer patients or for animals with chronic illness, it should be
yeah,
talked about, because eventually it's coming, and
yeah,
that's why I even believe that um, I want to somehow create something for my websites um, about natural death. And if it happens in the night, what do you do? How do you support your animal if you can't
yeah,
get them to the emergency? Hold them up, supporting them. It's okay, support the person mainly because I don't want them to feel like a failure,
yeah,
because it wasn't uh, their their intention. But
yeah,
death is just like birth; you just don't know how it's going to happen.
yeah, yeah,
And so, and also advanced directives are good. What about if you die? It makes you think
mm,
about what do you want to have for your own pet?
yeah,
And
yeah,
um, and if you want to have a list of all your veterinarians, all the different people in the animal's life, so that if something happened, that it's available. So yeah,
yeah,
that's just another thing. But I think there are people doing this now, right? If you Google online, you'll find it. Ask
sure.
ask ChatGPT, it'll write
Yeah,
it.
there you go.
It's it's
Have AI do it.
it's already there,
Yeah, yeah.
and
No,
and
that's, I mean, it's a really remarkable idea. I mean, I'm just thinking about, various times in my life and kind of like at what point would I have to make this decision? Because you just in the moment you just can be lost because it's the information is just the concept of it sometimes can be just
and,
overwhelming.
and that's why I believe. I mean, I know with my 93-year-old mother, she needs an advocate with her at every doctor's appointment, but a
Yeah.
lot of us do,
Yeah.
and that's where the death doula role could come into play, where if someone really needed someone just to be with them, that
Yeah.
that could be a possibility. I mean,
Yeah.
and because having a second set of ears is always a better
Yeah.
than one, because we in that moment we don't and they don't understand medical stuff, and the doctors, and sometimes they don't even know the doctor in this moment, and
Yeah.
it's really hard,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
both sides. It's
Yeah.
not an easy.
It's not an easy
I
thing.
don't. There's no blame. It's just humanity in the
Yeah.
modern world where everything is so fast and people don't see the same vet anymore. It's like I don't want to get into the corporate world, but it's changed things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I hear it from clients all the time. I had one yesterday that said it was a 3-year-old cat that it was diagnosed with liver cancer, but she says I just couldn't get I couldn't understand what they were saying,
Yeah.
she had a second opinion and they could do MRIs and go on, but it's unlikely to do anything. And so I helped her with the euthanasia, but she was so grateful. But she said that there weren't she couldn't get anything from the veterinary clinics. In her mind, I don't.
Sure. Right.
I
Right.
don't. I
Right.
wasn't in that moment. I know the veterinarians are probably very compassionate,
Sure.
and it's a
But
3-year
whatever
old
her need was wasn't met.
and for a 3-year-old cat, that's
Yeah.
young,
Devastated. Yeah.
and I see these young ones sometimes, and it's heartbreaking, but it's acceptance,
Life. Yeah.
and love. It's pure
Yeah.
love,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so yeah. So
Awesome.
we all have a
Thank
lot to do, and I hope the students take this on farther,
Yeah.
and if you feel pull this, please reach out to me. I'd be glad to talk to you. I did create a Facebook group called Vet Pet Doula Cafe. Right now, it's a private one, but if you send an
Sure.
email to me, I can add you to it because I want to try to get people talking about this more. And yeah,
Yeah, this is fascinating. So thank you so much. And I, I do tell people, I'm like, hey, they have little, if you believe in spirit, they have little spirits. And just think about, I Disney's Coco, right? I
oh,
don't know. And so, right, the
absolutely.
pets are on the ofrenda. The pets in spirit are on the other side. And actually,
I love that. That
the
was
the
one
the
of my
child's dog was there kind of as his companion on the other side, right? In that moment.
And who's to say that's not really the truth,
Right.
and I'm a believer in spirit, and I don't know if it's God. I just think that we all can have different ways of looking at things, and I think we're going to learn more. I'm a believer in plasma theory, that we're all plasma, and that we just move from one plasma to another,
To another.
and that's the soul, and
Yeah.
animals sure, and even the Pope says animals have souls now, so I mean, we've come a long way, and I'm hoping that the veterinary profession can be part of that. I think that
Awesome.
I just want to finish by saying that the one thing that I think we as veterinarians can do is we can help in this political climate because all of us love our animals. And so that's the common glue that helps bring
Mhm.
us past politics. If we're focused on this beloved creature that we all have in common, that maybe even at the moment of death, if we can show respect and that we can help heal, in that
Mhm.
moment. So I believe that we do have a role as veterinarians and students to come to that place. But it's a process for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you so much, Ken, for spending this time with us this evening.
you're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. We will make sure that your contact info is available. And like I said, we'll be posting this video on the Voice YouTube page at some point. And just really want to thank you for joining me, but also thank you for your work because I know that it's really making a difference in your community. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
All
So,
right. We'll talk soon.
all right. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see voice folks in about a week, and we'll be talking about systemic well-being next week on next week's kind of episode of this series. So thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Bye.